Hello, my name is Marty. I am an empathic coach, and I am hosting this summit for empaths, and it is called Create Freedom Through Clear Boundaries. This is to help us unleash our gift of our empathic abilities, experience vitality and joy, and regain our sovereignty in the world. This is Stephanie Sahano. They are a certified heartwork journaling coach and instructor. Stephanie does personal coaching, specializing in 3 stages of life: adulting, sandwich generation, dementia, grief, illness, recovering from family violence, self-love, gender issues, and getting unstuck. Stephanie's also certified infinite possibilities instructor. A lot of stuff. You're so amazing. So much stuff. Good stuff. I love it. This is Stephanie, and I am so happy that we can make this work and we can be here today together. And it's just delightful to meet you and have you be part of this summit.
Thank you for including me.
Absolutely. So I would love to just begin with you sharing a little bit about you and how you became all of those labels that we call ourselves. Because I know you can do anything. So
Yes. Well, I've been empathic all my life. I used to have like dreams that would come true and I could participate in both sides of the conversation, but it was disturbing to people. So I tried to suppress that. But right now I'm no longer suppressing that. And I have a lot of other ways of knowing things other than the 5 sensory ways of knowing things that's going on. So I feel like I fit into this particular summit. And the way I
yes.
became a coach is I was an occupational therapist for 30 odd years. And this empath part of me was very helpful because I work with people, with older people, seniors, and I could communicate with people with dementia. And I could communicate with
Wow.
people with aphasia and other communication disorders because I could just feel what they were trying to communicate, even if they couldn't use words to tell me what they were trying to
I love that.
communicate. Yeah. The tricky part was I could never teach their caregivers how to do
No,
it.
no,
Yeah.
that is definitely your gift.
Yes. And so I was happily doing this occupational therapy job, which was my calling. But then I had some health crises and it became unrealistic for me to do it full time. And I'm even not sure if I'll be able to return to it at this point. I'm on medical leave. So I was already in the process of becoming a certified heart work journaling coach and instructor. And then I've really just, while I've been on medical leave, decided to really pursue the coaching thing. And since I have all this experience, it really gives me a lot of foundation for coaching. So that's how I got like the stages of life coaching, the getting your life back with grief and illness and family violence issues, and then also personal empowerment, which are the ones about self-love and gender and getting unstuck. And I have experienced all of these things myself, and I believe that we can help people best with the things that we ourselves have survived and learned to thrive despite having those things in our lives.
Absolutely true. That's how we all choose the thing that we do.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. Thank you for sharing that. It's, such a gift. I love the how you can communicate with people with dementia. That's so incredible.
Yes. And people with aphasia who can't speak.
Ah, I didn't know what that meant, so thank you.
Oh, yes. Aphasia is a deficit in communication.
Mm,
Mhm.
what a beautiful gift. Reading the energy. That's what we do.
Yeah.
What we do. Excellent. So you had written something that I was really curious about, and that was what are domains versus boundaries?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this question. Um, our we each have a domain, and that is all the things that are us. So it's our thoughts, our feelings, our values, our body, our possessions, everything that is us and that belongs to us. That's our domain, and the boundary is like a fence around it that delineates where we are and where other people are. So we have all of this inside of our boundary, and other people have all of it inside of their boundary. And then if you're in relationship with someone, then where that crosses over, then that is something that you have to negotiate. And I would like to screen share for a moment and show you an image of that.
Okay, that'd be fabulous.
So here you can see what's inside the mind circle. That is my domain, and the little line that shows the edge of the circle, that's the boundary. And then here's theirs, and that circle, everything that's within it is theirs, and the line represents their boundary. And then what's the place where we overlap, that's what's ours. So we have shared things in our domain, and then we have a boundary around that too. And you can tell when a boundary violation occurs because somebody has reached into somebody else's domain. Like somebody has said, you need to think the way that I think, or I'm coming into your space and using something that belongs to you without asking, or I'm choosing to touch you in a way that I want to touch you for my benefit without your consent. And each of those things, we should really be offering consent before somebody is allowed past our boundary and into our domain. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And that image is from my boundaries handout, which we'll talk about that later. But you all will have access to that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That was a great visual. And you touched on that when you know there's a violation, boundary violation.
Yeah.
So a lot of ways that can happen. And so
Yes.
you got a couple of examples. Are there other places? And are boundary violations always intentional?
Boundary violations are not always intentional. Sometimes they can be accidental. Just like when it comes to your body, let's say that there's two people in a small kitchen and they're both working and they both turn around at the same time and one steps on the other's foot.
Yep, of course.
That was an accidental boundary violation against the other person's body. They did not consent to have their foot stepped on. The foot step on occurred, but then they probably will talk it out. One person will probably say, oops, that was my bad, or something like that. And they will make sure that everybody's okay. Add ice to the mix if they need it. There are, those are some unintentional boundary violations. There are some intentional boundary violations, which are more difficult to deal with because they usually there's a person who has a pattern of violating someone's boundaries and entering the other person's domain without consent. And those patterns of behavior, when it's a pattern of behavior that's used to control another person or to limit someone else's ability to be themselves, then that is where abuse is occurring. So like, for instance, if there's somebody who's like me, for instance, I have my preferred pronouns are they, them. There are people in my life who they don't want to use my preferred pronouns. And so when they misgender me, that's a boundary violation. I have asked and I've decided not to have the battle anymore with them because it's not productive and it disrupts our relationship. But there is always a piece of me that I hold in reserve because I don't feel completely safe in the presence of those people. So I don't consent to be fully myself in the presence of those people who don't respect who I actually am.
I hear you. That's pretty common.
It's very common. That's why gender is one of my specialties, because there's like a lot of what I do is I help people who love someone who has a gender other than the gender that they got used to them being. Like somebody's gender has transitioned or evolved in their lifetime, and they want to still be in relationship with the person, but they're not respecting the person's preferred pronouns or their gender or their name. And so I help those people figure out, how can I love this person as they would like to be loved without harming them? And how can I make that be okay for me too?
Yeah, somewhere in there, the agree to disagree, or the compromise.
I would even say evolve.
And evolve, of course.
Yes, evolving is the optimal solution. And if there's not, if there's some resistance, then looking at where does that resistance come from? And is there work that, like if I was not respecting somebody's gender pronouns, is there any work that I can do on myself or in my community so that I can feel free to use the person's preferred gender pronouns to refer to that person by their preferred name? Because names are a gift and we don't have to accept all gifts. Sometimes we can use a gift that we received for a while and then decide that gift is not meant for us, and we can choose to set that gift down.
Yes, absolutely. The season, reason, or a lifetime, just like relationships.
There you go. That's right.
Serve their purpose, and then it's time to release them, maybe to someone else sometimes.
Yes. Yes. And then that frees us up to no longer be burdened by the energy of that gift.
Oh gosh, absolutely true. Absolutely
Mhm.
true. What are some of the ways that you are able to be clear in how you set your boundaries?
One of the ways is by communicating when there's been a boundary violation. And there's a difference between making a request and setting a boundary. So like if I said, would you please do XYZ, that's a request. But if I say, if you continue to do XYZ, then I am going to, and then you say what the consequence is. Like, if you continue to call me she, then I will not participate in this phone call anymore. And then when they use she again, you can say, have a good rest of your day. I'm hanging up now, and then hang up. And whereas if the person does decide to call me by my preferred pronouns, or I have a poem about misgendering, and at the end of that poem, I say, and if that's too hard, you can call me beloved one.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So if the person chooses to call me beloved one, or call me by my preferred pronouns, or use my proper name, then I will continue to be on the phone call with them. But if they persist in misgendering me, then I don't have to stay. My presence is a gift, and I get to choose who I give that gift to.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so powerful. Who we know, because it's our energy that we're sharing.
Yeah.
And this applies to anybody who's empathic or highly sensitive, and or not, but we're speaking to a lot of highly sensitive people. So where we choose to put our time and our energy and our focus and who we share it with, it's super important to be able to define that for ourselves.
Yes. And I would just like to say that being a highly sensitive person myself, I recognize that being a highly sensitive person is a superpower. But
I call it that too.
yeah, you just have to know how to use it and when to use it, and when you need to protect yourself, because we do get drained more easily than other people. Mm-hmm.
And do you have any tools that you use? Could be boundaries, but things that you use to define where you end and the other begins so that you have your energy space?
Well, that's where the domain comes in handy, because, like, for instance, if I'm aware that somebody is having a thought and I disagree with their thought, then I need to not go into their domain and tell them you should be thinking about it the way that I think about it. Not everybody has evolved to the same level as everybody else. Sometimes they're more evolved, sometimes I'm more evolved. Sometimes I want some of what they have, but I can't just go and take it. Like, if I want to know, hey, how did you get to where you're at? I can't just like demand that they tell me. I have to say, I'm interested in your thinking about this thing. Would you please say more about that? And then I make that request, and then they get to decide. Do they want to tell me more, or do they not want to tell me more? Or if they want to know about my thinking, they get to ask me, and I get to decide, do I want to provide more information to them? Do I have that energy today? Maybe I don't have that energy today. And maybe I can say to them, I would love to tell you about that. Today is not going to work for me. Are you available on Friday at 2? You know, like, that's where the negotiation happens in the relationship between the two of us. And so we make sure that we are both resourced to have the conversation that needs to be had or that we desire to have.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. It took a long time for me to learn that I don't have to answer the phone.
Yes, the
When
phone is
it
an
rings,
invitation, and you don't have to accept all invitations.
I didn't realize that for a long time. And I mean, and oh my God, they're calling me, and I had to, and I get all upset about it. I'm like, I heard, and I somewhere along the line learned I can choose.
Yes, you
Or
can.
if I'm committed to answering because it's an appointment, let's just say, then I can choose before I answer to take that deep breath, center and ground myself before I answer the call so that I am in my own energy space and
Yes.
prepared for the phone call.
And even if it's about an appointment that you're trying to organize, you could say to the person, I'm not available right now. Can you call me back in 20 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
If you just need like 20 minutes to breathe for a few minutes, get grounded and get into your center, you're allowed to do that. Or can I have your number so I can call you back when I'm available? Both really great options.
Absolutely. All really great options in anywhere, depending on where you are at that moment.
Yes.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
the thing about being an empath is that we need to really pay attention to where we are in any given moment, because we could be really depleting our energy doing things that we want to do, like supporting people that we want to support, or by doing a project that we're really passionate about. But then we need to take time to recharge our own energy banks before we allow someone else to make a demand on us or make a request. That's why the domain is so important, because inside our domain, we decide how we use our energy. And the boundary really helps us to let other people know what energy I have available and what energy I do not have available to share with you right now.
All about that self-care.
Yes. Yes.
And as you were speaking about the domain, I was flashing on when I was a child and I lived with my parents growing up, and it was our domain. And I had my bedroom. I have a question in that because there was never any emotional safety.
Mm-hmm.
It was always very enmeshed.
Yes. That
So
is because as a child, you probably didn't have the opportunity to negotiate the relationship. The
no,
relationship with children and parents is usually pretty much determined by the parents.
was determined by the parent. And
Mm-hmm.
so like as I'm speaking this, it's coming. The question's coming, is how do we learn where our domain is? I mean, some things are very obvious when we've been enmeshed growing up. How do we begin to start to then create our own safe domain? Is that the way I want to say that?
Yes, I understand. I understand what you're asking. You want to know if there's been a lack of boundaries and the domains are all enmeshed as you described it. How do we figure out, how do we extricate ourselves and be clear on what's in my domain and what's in their domain? And then once we're clear, how do we negotiate the relationship and what's our domain combined? And sometimes that can be very difficult to do, and that might be a place to seek help and support from a coach. It's actually one of the things that I work with my clients on is like I have a client whose sister always just walks into her apartment, goes straight for the fridge and eats whatever she wants. And so I'm working with that client on how to recognize that that's in that client's domain and that they get to decide what's available for the sister. And they can ask the sister, or they can tell the sister, if you come over and you would like something to eat, please ask. If you continue to just go to the refrigerator then and take what you want, then you won't be welcome in my home. And then we'll meet at a park, or we'll, however else we're going to do it. But that's the tricky part for enmeshed situations.
It's very tricky. I heard that. I'm like, oh, that's really, takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
And it does take help. I found it took help. I couldn't
Yes.
always do that on my own. I needed that moral support.
Yes.
Someone to help me and cheerlead me before I might have the conversation. So I'd have that courage.
Yes. And there's there's a component of it where like we can like cognitively understand, oh, this is how I could do it. But then getting it so that we feel solid with it, so that we can actually follow through and do it, that takes some somatic practices, some breath work, some energy training. And so that's part of what I do in my work too, so that people feel empowered to recognize their domain versus other people's domain and to set and enforce their boundaries so they can maintain their boundaries. It's not the easiest thing to do. So I would recommend doing it with support.
Absolutely, because as you're talking, I'm remembering what it felt like and the fear that would drive it because we're empathic and highly sensitive. I know what the feeling might be that I'm going to feel from them,
Yeah.
and the rejection that might come with that, or whatever the outcome and the fallout from me saying, this is me and my person, and I'm important enough to say what I need to say, or set my boundaries, or care for myself enough, more than enough, however, whatever words you want to use there, to set those, put to put those in place.
Yes. And one of the tricky parts about doing that when you're a kid is that as a kid, as a human being, young person that's human, we are not equipped to provide for all of our own needs, shelter, food, connection. We have to rely on the adults in our environment to provide those things for us, because we're not like other beings, like, rabbits. They come out and they're kind of ready to fend for themselves. They can forage, and they need a few weeks of support from a more mature rabbit, but they don't need like 18 to 25 years of support like we do as humans. And so our job as a young person, from birth on until we're emancipated and fully independent, our job is to stay as connected as we can with those adults in our environment who are there to provide for us. Unfortunately, a lot of adults are not able to provide the things that we need. And so we have experiences like being enmeshed, like being left alone. And so those hard things that we go through without support from our grown-ups, they become trauma and sink into our bodies. And so we assume that if our grown-up wasn't able to be there for us, that it was something wrong with us, because we assume that the grown-up knows it all, because they're a grown-up after all. They've had more than 25 years on the planet usually, but it's actually a mistaken notion. And so so frequently what happens is that we internalize our own wrongness. We internalize that we didn't deserve good care. We internalize that we aren't worthy of being respected, or whatever the thing is. Each person's thing is different. But then we have like these layers of stuff that's piled onto us by our families and our society. And then we don't have the freedom and energy and capacity to set and maintain boundaries, because we didn't have a good role model for that. We didn't learn how. And so now as adults, we have to figure that out. And we have to relearn that those were their limitations. It was never about us. And they have those limitations because they also didn't have the good listening and support that they needed. And those people couldn't provide it to our parents because they didn't have it. And so like right now I'm trying to break an intergenerational curse.
There you go, the generational patterns. And that's what we're here doing now.
Yes. Yes.
As the empaths, highly sensitive, as anybody doing the evolution, transformation work, whatever we want to call anybody doing this.
Yes, and frequently we're the black sheeps, because frequently we have been called to it from our very earliest days as young people. And so we're the ones that, like, everybody wants everything to stay exactly as it was, but we don't want it to be like that, because we know it's not healthy for us, and we're trying to shift it to make it healthier for us. And so we end up like, we're the ones that point it out to everybody, intentionally or unintentionally.
Oh, yes.
Like we might be the one who cries when our feelings get hurt, and everybody else just says, "Oh, forget about it," right?
Be
But then,
sensitive.
yes, you're too sensitive. I'm just
Yep.
exactly sensitive enough, though,
Right.
right?
Yes,
And
I
my
get that
sensitivity,
today. I
yeah,
didn't
my
then.
sensitivity is my superpower. So quit messing with it.
Yes, absolutely. It is our superpower, and it's learning to embrace that. And it just takes these doing these types of things. And I get to speak with so many different people who share from their perspective and what you've learned. And everybody has their own experience that we bring to the table. And that's the beauty of it all.
Yes. And we learn layer by layer by layer. And I will tell you that my experience has been once I master a certain layer and I think, all right, I got this. Life's going to be good. It's going to coast smoothly now. Of course, I've only mastered that layer. That layer reveals another layer. And now
Absolutely.
there's another layer of challenge underneath that layer. Then I get working on that layer, I master it. And then that one reveals another deeper layer. And I think, I'm guessing, I haven't experienced it all, but I'm guessing there's infinitely many layers of learning that we can do.
Part of being human, because it's not just in the breaking or transforming this pattern. It's not just this generation or the last five. It's generations
Yes.
of trauma and things. And there's also many gifts that came along. We are here to shift that
Mhm.
trauma, the violence, the wounding, all the brokenness that we came in with by choice. I almost said by no fault of our own, but it is by choice.
Yes, it's by choice.
Came in to take on this at this time and place.
Yes, there's a Japanese art called kintsugi, and it's the repair of broken crockery using precious metals. So you may have seen that, and they're very beautiful pieces of artwork, and the scars are beautified, and they tell something of the history of the piece. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's how we as human beings in this particular incarnation are. We have scars that may have come with us from other incarnations, and they are part of the beauty of who we are in this lifetime.
They are. We don't often see that. I didn't for a long time. And now I do. And I'm really grateful. I'm grateful. When somebody first said that to me, I was like, I would never have chosen this. Never.
Yes.
My mind didn't choose it. It's not a conscious ego thing. It's a soul thing.
Yes. Yes, it's a soul thing. And we don't know how many incarnations our souls have experienced, or even if, like, in what configuration. Like the way that I think of it is like all of existence, all of the souls are like the ocean. And right now I'm the Stephanie wave that you can see on the surface, and you're the Marti wave that we can see on the surface. And right now, because we're together on the Zoom, we're traveling together like this, but we're still part of all that ocean of beings. And
A
so
great visual.
when we descend back into the ocean, like after this incarnation is over, maybe some of my molecules and some of your molecules blend, and then we rise up as another incarnation, and we don't even know who that being will be.
Right.
It could be like in the handout that people will get as my free gift. There's a poem called Precious Neighbor, and it talks about how every being, not just humans, but like even the fly dancing at my feet, that was a precious neighbor. And so we could come back as that with our molecules combined to be that fly, or we could come back as a tree. We don't really know, but whatever incarnation we appear as, we have a lesson to learn, or multiple lessons to learn, and it's just a matter of if we choose to learn them or not, or if we want to keep repeating that same lesson.
I'm here to learn. I repeat
Yeah,
enough here.
I'm here to learn too.
So that leads right into you have a handout and a gift for everyone. And one of those is that poem.
Yes, the poem Precious Neighbor, and it's the fourth page of the handout, which is called the Boundaries Handout, and it's available on my website. And I think you're going to put a link.
I am going to put a link, and if you go down below this video, you'll find that link to get your free gift. You can
Yeah.
go pick that up when you come here and listen. Any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave and impart with our audience?
Well, I would like to thank everyone for attending.
Mm,
And by attending, I know that you're desiring to grow in this particular lifetime that you're experiencing. And so I am wishing you the deepest of growth on your journey. And I hope that you can see how the places that you're struggling are places where you're growing, because all of our growth happens in our discomfort zone. Very little happens in our comfort zone. And if you can remember that growth happens in your discomfort zone, and that growing and loving are our purpose in this particular opportunity to be incarnated as humans, then I think that will be helpful perspective that I would love for you to take with you.
I love that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I will remember. I do well to remember. Some days are not as well as others, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you for saying yes and showing up here and being a part of this and sharing your message.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for including me.
I'm very grateful I got to meet you. And
Me too.
in this moment of our waves coming together.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And remember to go click the link below, get your gift, and I'll see you in the next one.